Well, that Super Wildcard weekend was certainly something. But anyway, welcome to another episode of Very Cold Lasagna, the podcast that houses a safe and open listening platform for casual, cold, and even the dumbest takes on the world of WWE, AEW, the NFL, and the wide world of pro wrestling and sports in general. I am your host, DylanLasagna. Welcome to today's episode number 83 of this freezing cold podcast that is always housed in the very cold fridge. Obviously, not literally, but it's also housing that very cold lasagna that tastes like a spicy hot Garfield the cat. And today we're going to be talking about Super Wildcard Weekend, NFL's opening matchups of their playoff slate. And I got to be honest with you. After that first opening game between the Las Vegas Raiders and the Cincinnati Bengals, I had some excitement. For the rest of the weekend. And then the games happened, and then it was kind of a bummer. Like, I was watching the Monday night game at work. Yes, I actually did it at work. And then, as the game went on, as I got home from work, it was just one of those kind of games. And that was like the common theme. That was kind of the common theme throughout this weekend. It's going to be one of those games. And certainly one of those games it was. It was a total super smashing. Kind of like Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Except it doesn't really feel that ultimate, if you know what I mean. Because, yes, for most of the weekend, it was Blowout City. It was a super smashing. Pretty much how I thought the 49ers playoff prophecy was going to be. So anyway, we're here to highlight, recap all the Super Wildcard Weekend matchups on today's show. Obviously, before we do, make sure you follow and listen to everything in relation to Very Cold Lasagna. Whether you do it on the YouTube channel or whether you do it on the audio platforms, be it Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor FM, or Google Podcasts, whichever way you want to listen to this show, you do you. Make sure you also follow the show on social media, on Twitter and Instagram at Very Cold Lasagna. Your support always means the world to me. Let's get into this Super Wildcard Weekend slate, shall we? This opening rounds of the NFL playoffs, it was supposed to be exciting. It was supposed to be the next season, like the I guess you could call it chapter 3 of an NFL book, I suppose. Yeah, the preseason, the regular season, and the postseason. And the playoffs are usually the exciting final chapter of this NFL book. Sadly, the sub chapter this past weekend wasn't all that exciting. It really wasn't. Like I said at the top of the show, there were a lot of blowouts, and sure, there were some nice performances, but yeah, you just can't understate how many blowouts there were, like, overall. So when we begin the playoffs, you begin in Cincinnati as the number 4 seeded and the AFC North champion Cincinnati Bengals took on the Las Vegas Raiders. This was a rematch of their Week 11 meeting in Las Vegas that the Bengals handedly won 32-13. Going into this game, there were a couple of storylines heading into that game. Whether or not the Bengals could win their first playoff game in forever. It was like 31 years that they kept bringing up on the broadcast, as if that, let's say, Joe Burrow never won a WWE title or whatever. And then they also talked about if the Raiders we're going to get too caught up in their Week 18 victory over the LA Chargers. So a lot of storylines heading to this one. And, the Bengals were in control for much of the first quarter. They had a early 10-3 lead after Joe Burrow had a touchdown with CJ Uzomah. And then the Bengals went up again before the first half. But then there's a little bit of a controversy here. Joe Burrow was running down down the side onto the side, out of the pocket to his right, and then he seemed like he was going to throw that ball away out of bounds, but he threw it towards the end zone. But then the referee whistled it during the throw, and then one of the receivers, Tyler Boyd, caught the pass, and then the Raiders defense was just confused, like, wait, what happened? And then the officials on the field ruled it a touchdown. I'm like, wait, like I saw that play's dead. They clearly blew the whistle dead. And yet the officials later still ruled it a touchdown. So by rule, the play should have been ruled dead. It was well clear that the officials blew the whistle right after the ball got out of Joe Burrow's hand. So by rule, the play should have been called dead, and they would have to do the down again. So the officials really made some tacky calls in this game, whether it be on the Raiders or on the Bengals, because this was just so bad. It was just like the visualization, the emblem of how bad the officiating was, not just in this game, but it was like the tone setter for the entire weekend when it came to the officiating. So, the Raiders managed to cut the lead to 20-13 at halftime. But, even before the that first half gaffe by the officials, it was clear that, the Raiders were making a lot of mistakes, whether it be their own or, the officials calling out some stupid penalties on them. It was clear that, those things were going to send them home early if they didn't clean things up a little bit and, try to make things, perfect for the referees. So the Bengals stayed red hot on offense in the first half. But then you get to the second half, they started to play a little too safe. And, they only scored 6 points off the field goals, and that kept the Raiders in the game. And then when you get to the final 2 minutes, Derek Carr managed to get the Raiders down to the field. It's only literally 26-19, so a touchdown game. And then you're literally 10 yards away from you're 10 yards away from getting a touchdown in a field goal to tie extra point to tie this game. But on a 4th and goal with 12 seconds left, Derek Carr felt heavy pressure coming to him under the Bengals pass rush, and he rushed a pass to Darren Waller, and it got intercepted by the Bengals defense, and the Bengals went on to win this game 26-19, and the Bengals get their first playoff victory that didn't involve head coach Marvin Lewis. And their first one in 31 years. So they're going on to the next round to face the Tennessee Titans. But this performance in the second half, it gives you a little bit of cause of concern for Cincinnati, because the way they played, safe play calling, running the ball, these short throws, it wasn't going to get the job. It clearly is not going to get the job done against a Tennessee team that's clearly getting healthy. And sure, they rely on Derrick Henry a lot, but you want to keep scoring. You want to keep scoring against this Tennessee team that not just relies on Derrick Henry, but still has a flawed secondary. So going against this top seeded Tennessee team, this Bengals team is going to have to attack early and often. Meanwhile, for the Las Vegas Raiders, their season ended on Saturday. A lot of high drama, high intensity, a season full of it. It was pretty much captivated here. It was pretty much a visualization here again. For all the drama that they've been through, hey, you at least made the playoffs. I'll give them credit. I'll give them that. I thought they were going to be done by week 14 when they got hammered by the Chiefs. But you got to give a little bit of credit to this Raiders team. But now the Raiders have to find a new head coach and a new GM, because it doesn't seem like that Mark Davis is intent on keeping Rich Bisaccia as a permanent head coach, and they just fired general manager Mike Mayock. So hey, they have openings now in Vegas. So whoever they get, it'll also play a role on whether or not Derek Carr will be the quarterback next season. So a lot of interesting decisions for the Raiders this offseason. So it's going to be interesting what Las Vegas is going to have come 2022. So in the nightcapper, in the AFC, the 3-seeded Buffalo Bills, the AFC East champions, took on the New England Patriots. This was probably one of my more my more favorite matchups of the wild card round. It was the round 3 of this AFC East season series. Both teams split their matchups in December, and there were plenty of storylines going into this game. Could Josh Allen and the Bills finally get some consistency? Can they get ready for this big playoff push, especially hopefully to face Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs? And you have to wonder how Mac Jones is going to do in his first playoff game. And then there are also the weather conditions in Western New York. It was going to be cold as hell in that game. And it certainly was, when you can see all the smoke from the players' mouths coming out. It was just like very cold. Very cold. Like you were in the fridge with my very cold lasagna. So anyway, when it came to this game, though, all the hype, all the drama surrounding this game, it quickly went out the window because this became a total ass whooping. So there weren't many highlights to point out, unless if you're a Bills fan, and especially not if you're a Patriots fan, because this was just a total ass whooping on Bill Belichick in New England. And on 7 offensive series by the Buffalo Bills, they scored on every single one of them in 6 minutes or less. Yes, no kidding. They didn't take 10 minutes. They didn't take 7 minutes. They took 6 minutes or less. And these Bills were a damn wrecking crew all over the Patriots defense. Josh Allen with his rifle arm and his scrambling ability, and then he finally managed to get the rest of the offense to follow suit, especially the receiving game. And then running back Devin Singletary played his best game of the season at the right time, slicing and dicing the Patriots run defense. And, again, the receiving game, hammering the Patriots secondary all game long. And, we can't forget the Bills defense, who's stopped most of the offense ice cold, exposing Mac Jones very, very early on and often. And, for Mac Jones, sure, he played in the national championship, but the national championship is not the NFL playoffs. So it was clear he was inexperienced in this kind of situation in these very high pressure games, because Mac Jones was intercepted and sacked twice in this game against a very relentless Buffalo defense. But, for the Patriots, if there were 2 positives heading out of Saturday night, it was the way Mac Jones played in garbage time, I guess. Finding Kendrick Bourne for 2 touchdowns. Pretty much those 2 guys were the only 2 players that showed up on Saturday. So Jones and Bourne, the only 2 good players that were worth a damn on Saturday. So the Bills went on to beat the Patriots 47-17 in a total ass kicking by the Bills. So going forward for the Patriots, they just simply throw this wild card game into the dumpster. Throw it to the dumpster, light it on fire, and look how to build around Mac Jones in year 2. Bill Belichick, apparently the GM as well, he needs to look at his roster, look at what he constructed last year in the offseason, where even I was praising him. Even I was calling him a winner of the free agency period. He needs to look at his roster and see, what the fuck did I do? What the fuck did I do with this supporting cast for my QB? Because he needs to get a better one. Kendrick Bourne, he's clearly going to be Mac Jones' go-to target. But outside of that, you don't have very great options in this passing game, in this offense. Aside from the running game too, yeah, it doesn't look good. And then defensively, there are a lot of players that are getting pretty old. So you kind of gotta look younger. In whether it's in free agency or in the draft. For the Bills, they're going into the second round, and they gotta feel really good about their offense, and as well as their defense, and they're gonna be a tough go for the Kansas City Chiefs, especially if they played like the way they did on in the wild card round against New England. If there is an area of concern for the Bills, it's their kicker, Tyler Bass, as he missed 2 extra points in this game, but that's something that he can correct, hopefully, in time for next Sunday against Kansas City on the road. So the Bills hammer the New England Patriots, send their asses home, 47-17. So then we get to the Sunday slate of games. The Tampa Bay Bucks, the 2-seeded NFC South champions, hosted the Philadelphia Eagles as the 7th seed. And, this was a rematch of their Thursday night meeting from week 6. And the Bucks beat them 28-22 back in Philadelphia. And, there was a lot of questions of whether or not the Eagles were just gonna stand a chance at all in this game. They relied heavily on the running game, and there were questions about whether or not Jalen Hurts can lead them to a potential upset, and whether he can keep up with Tom Brady, and a lot of questions surrounding the Eagles. And for the Bucks, it was just about taking care of business at home, and just pretty much how the Saturday slate ended with the Bills. Yeah, this is pretty much how the Sunday slate began, with an utter super smashing of a fluky Eagles team. So Tom Brady and the offense completely hammered the Eagles defense and scored 31 unanswered for 3 quarters. The running game of the Eagles was thrown out the window completely by the Bucks defense, and they completely exposed just how flawed Jalen Hurts is as a passer. Jalen Hurts was throwing it very high, and he was just holding on to the ball for too long. He couldn't find he couldn't notice anybody on his reads. He couldn't find Devontae Smith, and even if he did, he found him late and then he threw it high. So this is a very concerning performance for the Philadelphia Eagles, and they have to wonder if Jalen Hurts is their answer at quarterback. So for the Bucks, they're moving on to the next round. They're staying home to host the LA Rams, who coming off that Monday night victory most recently. But they have some concerns. Aside from their secondary, they also lost their 2 starting linemen in Ryan Jensen and Tristan Wirfs. If those 2 linemen can't play on Sunday, they're gonna have a hard time containing Aaron Donald and Von Miller in that game on a Sunday afternoon. Now for the Philadelphia Eagles, it remains a question on whether or not they'll keep Jalen Hurts or go for somebody on the trade market. But the front office, if they decide to keep Jalen Hurts, they should bring in some competition to pressure him into playing better. And even so, the front office has to address some things in free agency and the draft. And those main things are the offensive line and some receivers and defense. A lot of things to address for this Eagles team. And get rid of Jalen Reagor. He absolutely sucks ass. He really does. And I didn't even mention the score. I mean, don't even need to. It was a total smashing. 31-15. And 15 points by the Eagles in garbage time. Yeah, totally not reflective of what happened for 3 quarters. So then we get to the NFC. The San Francisco 49ers traveled to the Dallas Cowboys. This 49ers team, you already know how I talked about it on the last episode. They were coming off a big Week 18 victory over the LA Rams in overtime and completing that delusional playoff prophecy, at least part of it. And now here comes the second part. But then, in all seriousness, though, there were some things going into this game that you had to wonder how Trent Williams, their left tackle, was going to be, how healthy was he going to be heading into this game, as well as, how was Cowboys linebacker and defensive player of the year candidate Micah Parsons going to do against the 49ers offensive line. So some things to consider going to this game between the Niners and the Cowboys on a Sunday afternoon on Nickelodeon. Yes, that is right. So for the 49ers, the running game got going early and often. They got 2 touchdowns on the ground. Won the opening possession with Elijah Mitchell, and then Deebo Samuel after an interception by Dak Prescott in the third quarter. And for Dallas, man, this was just an utter disappointment from this team yet again. They were just simply unable to overcome both a furious pass rush by the Niners and their own damn mistakes on offense for much of the game. I mean, sure, Jimmy G tried to cost the Niners the game himself in the fourth quarter, but the Cowboys, again, made that crucial mistake of letting Dak run it down the middle in the final seconds of the game, only for the referee to bump into him because the Cowboys are stupid to not give it to the referee in the first place. So with less than 15 seconds left, they had very little time to spike it, and because Dak got bumped into the referee, that left no time to go for one more play as the Niners held on to win 23-17 and move on to face the Green Bay Packers in the divisional round. This was a very disappointing way for Dallas to end their season, but this was a game where even without with the ref ball and all the stupidity by the referees and the slime cannons, this Dallas offense yet again faltered with inconsistency. This was like one of the things I mentioned about, not just in the preview show, but also in my 49ers recap. This was a Dallas team wavering with inconsistency, and their defense was just unable to contain the Niners rushing attack. And this offense, it's just bleh. So this offseason is going to be an interesting one for the Cowboys. They have to address some things like the offensive line because they're not getting any younger, and they need some help for Michael Parsons and Trayvon Diggs in the secondary. And they have to consider finding at least one new coordinator if either their offensive coordinator Kellen Moore or their defensive coordinator Dan Quinn accepts a head coaching gig elsewhere. And it looks like Mark McCarthy is going to stay, so they better get to work. They really better get to work. For the 49ers too, again, they move on to face the top-seeded Green Bay Packers in cold-ass Lambeau Field. This is in a rematch of Week 3 where the 49ers gave the Packers too much time to kick a field goal to win the game on their home turf. 30-27, I believe. That was the score. So this time around, they're going to need a much more mistake-free performance from Jimmy G against a better defense that's going to get Jair Alexander and Zadarius Smith back, as well as an offensive line that's going to get what's his name? Either way, they're going to get their offensive line back at full strength. Oh, David Bakhtiari back to protect Aaron Rodgers. So yeah, you're not playing Dak Prescott. You're not playing the Dallas Bears. You're not playing Dallas Bears football in the divisionals. You're playing the Green Bay Packers in cold-ass Lambeau Field. So for the Niners, yeah, your playoff prophecy may happen next weekend, but then again, it may not. So in the Sunday night capper, more blowouts. The 2-seed Kansas City Chiefs and the AFC West champions beat the Pittsburgh Steelers, the 7th-seeded Pittsburgh Steelers, 42-21. A rematch of their Week 16 meeting where Kansas City also boat raced Pittsburgh 36-10. The Chiefs scoring 30 unanswered points midway into the third quarter on a middling Steelers defense. Going to this game, it was still a question of whether this was going to be Big Ben's last game or not. And there's like this huge like talk during the game that this could be it for Ben, and they're talking about their favorite memories of him and whatnot. And for the Chiefs, how are they gonna do going into this game, and how much dick sucking was Chris Collinsworth gonna do in this game? I'm just kidding, but either way, there wasn't really much storylines to be talked about because we all knew what was going to happen. A total ass whooping on the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I mean, it wasn't that way early on. The defense of the Steelers, it kept the team in the game for most of the first half. TJ Watt, defensive player of the year candidate, he forced a fumble on a wildcat play by the Chiefs. He forced a fumble on McCole Hardman, the receiver, and he recovered it and picked it up and scored a touchdown to give the Pittsburgh their only lead of the game. Unfortunately for the Steelers, that turned out to be the wake-up call for Kansas City, as Patrick Mahomes and the offense pretty much lit up the Pittsburgh defense the rest of the way. So yet again, Pittsburgh managed to get boat raced by the Kansas City Chiefs, yet it was even worse. Why? Because unlike Week 16, it was 35 unanswered, and it was in the bright lights of a Sunday night in a playoff game. And yet again, Big Ben, as much as he accomplished in his career, he just looked like washed ass crumbs, and especially in the primetime lights. And I mean, it wasn't all Big Ben's fault. His receivers couldn't catch shit in this game. They really couldn't. As if they had hot butter all over their hands. They really did. So they did, sure, they made the box score semi-respectable in the fourth quarter. They got 2 more touchdowns for Ben in his probably last game, but 42-21 is nothing to write home about for this Steelers team trying to give Ben, one last respectable game. For the Pittsburgh Steelers, they head towards an offseason of uncertainty. It's probably likely that Big Ben is finally going to hang up his helmet. He's going to hang up his jersey and, say goodbye to football life and prepare for, post-football life, And with that, the Steelers have to quickly figure out who's going to be his successor. And that successor is certainly not on the roster. We already see what Mason Rudolph is capable of, and he certainly ain't capable of being a franchise quarterback. And, well, Dwayne Haskins, we saw what he did in Washington in 2 years. So, whether it be in the trade market or in the draft, the Steelers have to figure out quickly who is going to replace Big Ben. And, if Big Ben does retire, he had a good career, great accomplishments and all that, but it's time for both sides to move on. For the Kansas City Chiefs, they're going to host the Bills in the semifinals and in a rematch of last year's AFC Championship game that the Chiefs won to go on to their second straight Super Bowl. And, revenge is going to be on the mind of both teams. For the Bills, last year's AFC Championship game, screw the regular season, what happened in Week 5. For the Chiefs, Week 5, where they got hammered by the Bills in that rainy game. So this is going to be one heck of a game. Hopefully, one of the better games from this wild card round going into this divisional round. And this didn't have the potential of a shootout. Unlike Week 5, their Week 5 meeting. This has the potential of a shootout between Mahomes and Josh Allen. Then in the Monday night closer, in the NFC side, an NFC West 3 match between the LA Rams and the Arizona Cardinals. Round 3 of their NFC West rivalry. Both teams splitting their regular season meeting. Going to this game, both teams were struggling into this matchup. They had lost their final regular season matchups. The Cardinals losing to the Seahawks in another offensive slug performance by Arizona, and the Rams losing in overtime to give the 49ers their delusional playoff backdoor slot. So for both teams, they were going to just try to have a better bounce back performance. And, for Arizona, there were a lot there were at least a question for me on whether or not head coach Cliff Kingsbury was going to be coaching for his job. Unfortunately, that turned out not to be the case, because this was just yet another total smashing, and was pretty much the theme of this Super Wildcard weekend. We had another one smashing on Saturday night, and then we closed it out with another smashing on a Monday night. The Rams offense just completely cooked the Cardinals. And Matthew Stafford, Odell Beckham Jr. were just lights out in this game. And Cooper Kupp, the leading receiver in the NFL, they didn't even have to do much. He really didn't have to do much in this game. He scored a touchdown, but in all honesty, with the way the Rams were rolling, honestly didn't have to do much in this game. And when you look at the Cardinals, Kyler Murray tried to do too much. He only made things worse for his team. He made 2 very bad interceptions, and the first one was the total game changer. He just yeeted the ball out in the air, and he was literally in the end zone just trying to avoid a safety by David Long, and he just yeeted it out in the air, and it ended up being gifted to the Rams for an easy pick 6. So things only got worse for Arizona when Budda Baker took a big hit from running back Cam Akers, and that sent him to the hospital. Very unfortunate for him. So Arizona, yet again, another very bad performance, another choke job by this duo of Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray. And the Rams, a very big bounce back performance for them as they prepare for a big matchup in the divisionals against the Tampa Bay Bucks in Tampa. For both teams going into what's next for them, for Arizona, the front office and ownership, they have to consider at some point moving on from head coach Cliff Kingsbury and whether or not Kyler Murray is their long-term guy, because at some point they're not really producing results. They really aren't when you think about it. 2 years straight, they choked away a good chance of making a deep playoff run and a chance at a Super Bowl. So the ownership group has to wonder if these 2 guys are the right men for bringing home their first Lombardi trophy. But even if they do say, the front office has to address the defense to match up the offense's high octane power. For the Rams, like I said, they face the Tampa Bay Bucks and Tom Brady in the semifinals. This time, this meeting's in Tampa. Whereas in week 3, the Rams beat the Bucks back then. The LA defense pretty much put the clamps on Tom Brady, the running game, and that Rams offense just cooked what was left of the Bucks secondary in that game. So that was Super Wildcard weekend. A lot of blowouts, a lot of good performances for sure by quarterbacks, but yeah, not really the super weekend that we were all hoping for. Really quickly, some winners and losers of Super Wildcard weekend. Josh Allen, this is really his best game since the Thanksgiving game back in November. He completely torched the Patriots right out of the gate. He looked precise in his throws. And he looked really good in the deep passing game to his two receivers like Dawson Knox, Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley. He really looked good in this game, and finally his supporting cast and the receivers helped him out by doing what they do, doing the rest for him. They caught the ball, got out in space, and finished in stride. So this performance by this offense and Josh Allen may be the thing that reheats them up for a very big matchup in Kansas City. The LA Rams, after last week's performance against the 49ers, they responded in a big way against their other division rivals in the Arizona Cardinals, and probably even in a better way. They eliminated them in the first round in an emphatic fashion, with the pass rush completely flustering Kyler Murray and the offense just lighting up the Cardinals secondary and Sean McVay getting a mistake-free performance by Matthew Stafford. Like, I think he heard what I said when he needed to relax. He needed to chill out and just, throw in stride from my preview episode. So they go into this matchup against Tampa Bay. And if they want to beat Tom Brady again, certainly it's not going to be the blowout that it was in week 3. They're going to need to repeat that same performance that they had in this wild card game, and obviously adjust to the Bucs' better defensive line and the running game, whether or not they'll have Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette back. So a lot of things that the Rams need to do heading into this game against the Bucs, but for now, this was a good game for them. Now for the losers, the Patriots defense. They caught fire in the early second half, and the rest of the way, aside from the last couple of weeks of the season. But that defense that's been red hot was completely hosed out on Saturday night. I don't know if it was the competition they faced during that red hot streak, but man, they failed to really keep it competitive against Josh Allen in that suddenly hot Bills offense. They just looked lost against the Bills receivers. They didn't know where the ball was going to be placed. They didn't know what coverages they were going to do. It was just bad defense played by a Bill Belichick led squad. The Dallas Cowboys, like I said, their inconsistency on offense was something to worry about heading into this Niner game, and it really bit them in the ass. Dak looked and played scared against a better Niners defensive line that lost Nick Bosa in the second half to a concussion. And then the running game of Zeke Elliott and Tony Pollard, next to nowhere, didn't get anything going. And the receiving game outside the Amari Cooper touchdown and the fourth quarter failed comeback, they're outside of those things, next to nothing. Really next to nothing. And for an offense that's this stacked and a defense that's almost that stacked, this is a very disappointing performance by the Dallas Cowboys. This is probably their best chance to make a Super Bowl run, or at least a NFC Championship appearance. But for all that talk, for all that smack that the Cowboys did during the season, certainly didn't show up here. So this game on Sunday against the 49ers was just another visualization of yet more Dallas Cowboys failure in the playoffs. Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury, the Cardinals headed into Monday night struggling on offense, and Cliff Kingsbury didn't really have any answers on how to fix it. He didn't make any adjustments week after week. And Monday night, not only did he not do that again, but he also had no answers on how to get his quarterback reignited, how to get him fired up. Kyler Murray played like a deer in the headlights. He played like Jimmy Garbage Fail, only with the mobility. But Kyler Murray played like he had no accuracy. He held on to the ball for too long. He failed to read coverages, and he literally just said, "Fuck it. Somebody's there to catch it." He just literally yeeted the ball on almost every throw, only to get met with disappointment. So this was literally yet another choke job by the quarterback and head coach duo. And like I said, at some point, Arizona has to wonder whether or not these two are the right ones to net them their first Super Bowl trophy. So that decision could come either this offseason or next offseason. So some things to consider for Arizona. And then the officiating. In light of all the blowouts this weekend, most of these games saw a litany of terrible officials. Some of the most notable calls were the Joe Burrow whistle touchdown, the Tyler Boyd, and then on Sunday morning, the Eagles defensive end Derek Barnett got called for roughing the passer on Tom Brady when it was clear on replays that Derek Barnett got pushed by one of the Bucs offensive linemen. He got pushed into Tom Brady, and that push by one of the Bucs offensive linemen caused Derek Barnett to go into Brady, and the refs called that roughing the passer. How stupid are they? And then let's not forget the Cowboys offensive line getting away with holding calls. Wow. Like, do the refs have their blinders on? Like, sorry, we don't see shit. Or like, we have our one blind eye on. That's roughing the passer. Like, is the NFL trying to transition to sarcastic ball? Are they trying to like have players like hug each other with a balloon and drink each other's cum? So anyway, one officiating crew in Jerome Boger's crew already got the hammer for this postseason because of their stupidity in the Raiders-Bengals game. So who knows by Super Bowl weekend which officials are going to call a semi-decent game, a semi-impartial game. Like, we've already gotten one bad weekend of officiating. How many more are we going to get going into the Super Bowl? How many? It's this weekend was just bad, as if the blowouts weren't disappointing enough. You have a bad officiating to top it all off. Really bad. So what do you guys think about Super Wildcard Weekend? What do you guys think about the winners going into the divisional round? What about the losers going into their off seasons? Let me know how you felt about this super, but also not so super Wildcard Weekend. But that is it for this episode of Very Cold Lasagna. I am your host, DylanLasagna. Thank you for tuning into this fine episode number 83 of this Freezing Cold podcast. Make sure you tune into the episodes, whether it's on YouTube or the audio platforms, and follow the show on social media, on Twitter and Instagram at Very Cold Lasagna. And as always, keep that lasagna very cold in the fridge with your takes on the world of pro wrestling and sports. Very cold in the fridge with your takes on the world of pro wrestling and sports. Icy cold with that Very Cold Lasagna. And let's just hope that the divisional weekend is much better than Super Wildcard Weekend was. But until next time, peace out.